Impact sourcing is a way of delivering top quality customer experiences, one that's taken on momentum in recent months. However, to many, this concept is still nebulous. Now, to date, discussion about impact sourcing has mainly been focused around this business model's application offshore. But it's more apparent than ever that there are many avenues in key sourcing markets to leverage talent in communities that have suffered chronic underemployment and a lack of career opportunities. To learn more about this domestic CX impact sourcing play, the CX File speaks to Hui Wu-Curtis, the COO of SupportU, an organization that provides customer management services using this business model with US-based talent. Hui joins us from her home in Phoenix, Arizona. We'll go straight to the interview. We're really excited this week on the CX Files to welcome a longtime friend, Hui Wu-Curtis, who joins us from her home office in Phoenix, Arizona. Hui, it's great to have you here. Thanks for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure.
So, you've had some exciting changes professionally in the last little while. You have moved to co-found an organization called SupportU that has got a very interesting business model. Could you just take us through a little bit about what SupportU is about and exactly what you're looking to achieve and accomplish with this company?
Yeah, absolutely. With the experience that I've had with BPOs, I saw that there was certain opportunities in terms of, how I didn't want to form a different company. And so thinking about it, I've come in contact with so many wonderful, talented people that really kind of struggled within kind of that corporate environment to really be seen, be noticed, and much more less opportunities for them in the workplace. And so I gave it some thought, and me and a business partner, Ron Petrie, out in South Carolina, decided to form SupportU. And it's very different in the fact that our mission is really driven by two fundamental premises. One is from a employer perspective, we want to be able to provide employment opportunities to really untapped, underrepresented groups of the population. And so people who don't normally fit into corporate America 8 to 5, single parents, military, college students, LGBTQ, minorities, you name it, and who aren't necessarily seen in mainstream, and to be able to give them a safe place to work, safe place to be themselves, and really, more importantly, a really credible place for them to truly grow and advance their capabilities of their financial situation. And then the second piece is by capturing the diversity and really kind of, a different subset of talent, now we can in turn really deliver truly on great customer experience, because now you have a good representation of the population that they serve.
Okay, that's a really good background, Hui. And I think it takes us really nicely into the meat of what we're looking to try and dive into, because what you've described as a business model for SupportU would, in my view, fall into that element of impact sourcing, that idea that we are trying to look to bring in people from various backgrounds, in many cases disadvantaged backgrounds, and provide them with that leg up on the ladder so that they can achieve their potential. And that raises a question, I think, that has been posed by a lot of different people and it's gotten a lot of different answers. But I'd love to know from your perspective, based on the clients and the prospects that you're talking to, why is impact sourcing, or why are impact sourcing initiatives so important for the enterprise community in the end of 2021 going into 2022?
Yeah, I think that really kind of the issues with bigotry and racism have always kind of percolated within our history, and I'm talking specifically within the U.S. And for a variety of different reasons, it really is taking kind of a mainstream position now to cause a lot more awareness and to be able to get the media to provide the attention that it really needs to come out and say, you know what, it's so pervasive, we do have a problem. And so I think this provides us with greater focus and a greater need to really correct some of these wrongs. And so I think that's why so many companies and so many individuals are rallying around these causes, whether it be Black Lives Matters or different social movements or Asian hate, you name it. It's about time that we actually take a step forward to really do something that's much more sustainable and much more broad-based. So I think the inclusion, the diversity of the workforce, all that stuff really has kind of come to a plateau now that we really need to answer to it in a more meaningful way. And the second piece is I just think that the current model isn't working. No, not everybody is given equal opportunity. And when you have very homogeneous type of workforce towards the top, they don't necessarily understand or can commiserate with the struggles or the lack of doors that open up to people within disadvantaged groups. And so I think this is the right time for enterprises to really take a good look at themselves and a good look at the workforce. And the workforce is speaking. You hear people taking mass exoduses and leaving their jobs because they're just tired. They're tired of all the adversity that they're dealing with.
So with that in mind, how well understood do you think that this business model that SupportU is championing is understood from a CX perspective within the buyer community, within the organizations that are looking to work with outsourcers?
Yeah, I would say that, we definitely see much more awareness, much more concrete initiatives and commitments towards impact sourcing from much larger clients, right? The ones that are, global in nature. And so they've come to us and they've dedicated like a certain percentage of the suppliers to be diverse, minority in nature. Now, I would say the smaller to medium-sized businesses, they know that they need to be aware of it and they need to contribute in some way, but they don't necessarily have any true initiatives. They just know they want to go and explore and see what it's all about. So I think it comes at a really good time, but in some circumstances, people say they want it, but they haven't made any really commitments to it. And we're definitely not seeing, again, their commitments to making sure that this is the right thing to do, and more importantly, making sure that this model is successful for them. So it all sounds good, but they don't come full circle in terms of now making that connection and saying, okay, we hired somebody with a diverse background. Let's make sure they get the right career pathing and development that they need. And then let's make sure that they contribute and that it's meaningful and it's successful on both sides. And I think there's somewhere along the way, there continues to create a gap and we don't come full circle to see the benefits of it.
Well, considering that you're looking to try and deliver using this business model and you're doing it onshore, I was just curious, as somebody who has been recently the CEO of an organization that's been driving CX from an offshore, nearshore perspective, what do you see as perhaps the differences and approaches that you'll need to take with regards to recruitment or management of operations domestically in the US?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I've always been a huge advocate for nearshore and offshore when it comes to outsourcing. But I think when we're looking at impact sourcing and what it truly means, it gets boiled down to one primary thing, which is providing career opportunities to people who are otherwise have limited prospects. And so when you use that definition, we can see it very clearly within the United States of the differences between groupings and nationalities and, backgrounds and lots in life. And so that divide seems much more greater in the US. Now, with nearshore and offshore, although I've worked with many of those countries, it's a lot more homogeneous as a population. Right.
Yeah.
And so if you were to ask me, who are the disadvantaged groups? Who are the untapped parts of the population that need opportunities for employment? I couldn't name those special groups within those regions. Mm-hmm. So if I were to look at the Philippines, so Filipinos come to the US, they would be considered a disadvantaged group because they don't necessarily fit in that realm. But if I were to go to the Philippines, well, the Filipinos are a majority there, but who would their minority group be there? And so I think a lot of it is just our learning curve and an awareness of what those groups are. And I think over time, as we fine tune kind of what this model needs to look like within the US, then we're going to branch out to other countries, learn more about them culturally. And then once
Yeah.
we have that information, then we can now replicate kind of the same support model.
But it's coming at a really interesting time because you referenced the Great Resignation a little while ago. Let's be perfectly frank, no matter who you talk to in the CX ecosystem, whether it's the enterprise CX decision makers, whether it's the outsourcers, I spoke to some site selectors the last couple of days, and everybody is saying the same thing. The labor market is as tight as it's ever been, and it's going to get tighter more than likely. Now, based on what SupportU is doing, reaching out to some of these communities that might have been in a tougher position historically with regards to finding good career opportunities, what are some of the novel approaches that you would need to try and pinpoint sources of recruitment so you can go out and you can offer these opportunities to people who might come from these different backgrounds and are looking to get on the work ladder and build a career?
Yeah, I don't know if it's entirely unique, but it just takes a bit more legwork and a lot more commitment to the partnerships, right? And so, I'm starting, since I'm located in Phoenix, it's easier for me to go and talk to different community leaders and to CEOs of nonprofits, and going directly to them, and not to necessarily use them as a resource or for staffing, because there's a lot of companies here that approach them, right? But what makes us uniquely different, and I'll use Arouette as an example. So they're an organization that we're working with, and what they do is they develop programs for women inmates, and they help give them vocational training. And so when they transition out, they also help them with housing, with financial support, with transportation, with daycare, whatever they need, and give them the right skills and the right confidence to re-enter back into society. And so many times, I'll use the example of a woman that comes from an abusive, battered relationship, and she was trying to just do the right thing to protect her family. But because of her actions years ago to protect her family, that caused her to be incarcerated for 6-7 years, right? And so now she's back out in society and she doesn't know where to start. And so we're partnering together to really fine tune what their education process is, what their support system is, and then how does that best integrate into what SupportU has to offer. And it is a constant dialogue and a constant meeting to make sure that we continue to fine tune that, really kind of that structure that's going to help them be successful once they reach kind of the outside the world for them. And so I think it's unique programs like that, but to offer so much more. I'm not asking them to give me, 50 to 100 people for entry-level positions. What their goal is, these organizations, is really want to elevate the opportunities to build better financial futures. And so what better place than a call center, right? You start as an agent, and then you get really good at it, and we'll give you the right development and support. And then you can move into a QA role. You can move into a training role. You can get developed up that career ladder to be a leader. And so there's so many different opportunities just within call centers that people don't really kind of see it as a viable career. And it's a fantastic and safe place for them to practice and to learn.
And learning is an angle I'd really like to explore with you, because I think that traditionally, in at least the US contact center space or the Canadian one, there's been an assumption that if somebody is going to come in and work as an agent, they've probably completed at least high school. They've probably developed some training, some learning skills, and so forth. Unfortunately, I think for a lot of people coming from disadvantaged communities, reaching high school might have been an unattainable goal, or something that many of them just might not have been able to accomplish. How do you bring somebody like that in who's got all the motivation in the world and wants to better their career opportunities and make something of themselves, when perhaps they haven't had that chance to develop the learning or the study skills that are required to start as an agent and work their way up through the course of a CX ecosystem?
Yeah. And, I think this is where kind of our community partners are so invaluable to us, because they can really, with their special funding and with their programs already in place, we can work with them to saying, hey, here are that kind of these fundamental skills that you can put within your program that's going to teach them about soft skills, about typing skills. And so now they just need access to those resources. And so now that they have access to those resources and they work and get committed to going through the training, now they're better prepared and now have at least the basic competencies to now enter, our contact center world. And so I think that serves as a really good preparation and a feeder pull for us, but more importantly, making sure that we do a good job of giving them access to the resources and the support, and then transitioning them successfully into a job.
What I love about what you just said is the fact that you've talked about developing, we were talking about earlier, a CX ecosystem. This is a community CX ecosystem where you're able to leverage community partners to help bring and upscale labor so that they can hit the ground running, which I think is just such a confidence builder for people who are coming in from perhaps a disadvantaged background.
Yeah, absolutely. And I take like one specific example where, there was a gal who had worked for an organization for 20 plus years, and she was fantastic and moved all over the place, had great knowledge. But you know what? She just barely made a supervisor position. And she came and talked to me. It's like, look, everybody that was in my class, they've all moved on to be managers and directors of the company. And I'm just starting out to be a supervisor. I said, okay, we can work on that. We can go as fast or as slow as you want, but it takes real commitment on your part. I'm not going to say nice things. I'm going to say things that can help you get stronger. And, over a year's time, she just catapulted past her colleagues. And now today she's successfully in higher leadership roles, and she's outperforming many of her counterparts. But in the very beginning, the reason why she wasn't ever given those opportunities, and I truly believe this, is because she didn't fit that right image. She was Hispanic. She was heavy set. She didn't have that executive presence that they were looking for. And it's disappointing because they let the aesthetics, discount her from a knowledge and from a skill set perspective. All I did was open up that door for her, and she did amazingly well after that.
That's fantastic. Really, really inspiring story, Hui, and thank you for sharing it. So I want to finish off the discussion now to talk a little bit about the future of impact sourcing domestically, because one of the things that I've noticed over the past few years is there's been no shortage of great news stories when it comes to this business model, but you most often hear them associated with South Africa, with India, with the Philippines, with Jamaica, Mexico. It's becoming much more of an angle or a game changer, I think, in terms of domestic delivery. Why should BPOs operating in the US, Canada, or Western Europe be thinking about how they can bring the impact sourcing model into their own communities?
Yeah, I think that it serves two different purposes, Peter. I think one is it really opens up kind of a broader pool of diverse workforces, right? And so it lets you really kind of view, vet out, assess, and hire just very, very different groups of people that you wouldn't normally have thought of before, because one, maybe they just weren't aware that these were employment opportunities that's accessible to them, or two, like you said earlier, they just kind of fall short on skills, so they don't even bother attempting it, right? So we have to get the message out there to saying this is really kind of viable workforce options. The second piece of it, why it really should be important to the BPO community for impact sourcing, is it really helps build financial stability and financial futures for many of these, these underserved populations. That in turn goes and helps feed and support their family. And then that goes and really supports the community in general by making sure that people work and spend their money in the communities that they live in, and that we support the continued growth and advancement within those communities. So it's not a feel-good cause. There really is a lot of economic and market impacts to really approaching this type of solution, and it's the right thing to do. And so we all need the support. It's not one single silver bullet that's going to solve all the answers, but it's a collective of all of these answers put together and complement to really kind of make things work in a very different way for the future, because we all know COVID has fundamentally changed that definition of what normal looks like. And so we've got to think differently. We've got to find a different angle.
And I think what you're saying really makes a lot of sense from the perspective of everything has changed, and all the things that we thought were going to be in place forever, they've been thrown out the window. Those I hate to use this expression, but the sacred cows of the CX years that had gone on for forever. Now things are going to require a very different mindset in terms of how the job is going to get done. And I think having the ability to have that impact on the communities in which the service is being delivered from, is going to be just so important.
It is, and it really kind of shows our commitment from, at least SupportU's all our level of commitment all the way from the top to the very bottom, right? That we're invested in. This is something that we believe in. This is something that we're practicing, and it really kind of permeates throughout our culture from the very moment that we talk to you about a job opportunity to when you're about to leave our organization, because now you've gained those skill sets that's going to cause you to be more valuable in the market and move on. And if that's the case, we're going to support that, because that's the right thing to do. And if we can produce better people and better talent, then we've done our jobs.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Well, Hui Wu-Curtis, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the CX Files. Your story in terms of what you've based SupportU around, the fundamentals and the core and the different principles are wonderful, and I think an inspiration to the entire industry, and we wish you all the success in the world as you move forward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for this opportunity again.
Thanks for downloading the CX Files podcast. If you have a moment, please give us a star rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, because this really helps other people to find the podcast. If you have any suggestions for future guests, or ideas, people or topics, then please just find myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan on LinkedIn and send a suggestion.